This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, June 12th, 2023. Case file number 1144, written by Mommy Joe Jackson, the Bermuda Triangle of West Texas. Driving through West Texas, and on the left of the road, there was a small, abandoned mud brick house with an old, broken wagon wheel leaning on its front left corner. About a mile down the road, there was an abandoned mechanic shop with a rounded, rusty, corrugated tin garage behind it. We keep driving, and I feel like I'm losing it, because it's so flat and boring out there. Then I see a small building on the left of the road. It's a mud brick house, a broken wagon wheel and all. About a mile down the road, the exact same abandoned mechanic shop with the same exact rusty garage out back. We didn't get turned around, and I hadn't fallen asleep and gotten confused. I pointed out the repeated house and shop to my husband, and he had no idea what I was talking about. That was the first time he's seen them, and he really liked them because they were so classic looking. To this day, I swear to God, we accidentally drove through a kind of Bermuda Triangle thing in West Texas, and no one can tell me any different. Case file number 1145, written by MC Freak 2013. Did I sleepwalk through an entire conversation? I worked as the instructor for the pit of my old school band during band camp. We always go to a university for a week and sleep in the dorms. When I was a student, I had a roommate to help wake me up in the mornings, but since I had already graduated and was considered an adult/teacher, I had a room to myself. On our last day of camp, I woke up at about 8:30 a.m. to one of the assistant directors banging on my door yelling for me to get up. I had set several alarms to wake me up at 5 a.m., then some at 6 in case I overslept those, and so on. My girlfriend even agreed to call me to make sure I wake up because I can be such a deep sleeper sometimes. Well, I jump out of bed and throw some clothes on and run down to the field, having no time for a shower or breakfast since we started an hour ago. Before I left my room, I grabbed my phone, which should have been charging on the stand next to me. Instead, it was on the other side of the room with my bag that was already packed to go, which I don't remember packing the night before. My phone didn't light up when I hit the home button, but I was in too much of a hurry to worry about that at the time. When I got to the stadium, my girlfriend told me she called, and I answered and told her I was already going to the cafeteria building. I even replied to her text message when she asked if I was awake. I have never sleepwalked in my life, but that is the only explanation I have because I don't remember any of it. But sure enough, when I plugged my phone in, it was dead. I checked my messages and found we had a full conversation that I am completely unaware of. Again, all I can think of is sleepwalking. My room was locked and no one else had a way in. Bonus file written by Jody Highroller 1, a doctor's brush with the supernatural. My uncle is a general surgeon in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and one time he told me the creepiest story I've ever heard. He was an intern working in the ER late one night, working with another team of doctors working to keep this elderly man alive. He had a surprising amount of hair for a man his age and had big bushy white eyebrows, but he was on his last legs, slowly dying, holding on to life. The old man was having a very serious heart attack, and the doctors were in a frenzy to assist this man just when another immediate call came in. A couple teenagers were driving around Winnipeg, intoxicated I'm sure, and they crashed into a guardrail. It was a very serious crash. The driver and person in the shotgun didn't make it, but a girl sitting right behind the driver's seat made it out alive but in critical condition. She as well was hanging on to life. The girl rushed into the ER, and my uncle was told to leave his station with the old man because his hopes were dwindling every minute. The moment the girl entered the ER, most of the attention was directed to her. There was a lot of blood she was losing. A lot of blood, my uncle said, and went into a coma for about 10 minutes. And within that time, he was told to leave the girl. They didn't need him anymore. So he went back to the old man, and he had died. This is where it gets weird. The next day, the girl was in stable condition. It was quite miraculous, he told me. My uncle went to talk to this girl, and for some reason, he didn't know why, he just felt like asking her what it was like to be in the coma. And she told him, "It was weird. I was in this vast, open, infinite dark space except for the speck of light far, far away. And as I walked around, I saw an old man sitting on a bench. I went over to him, and all he said to me was that it wasn't my time and to turn around. So I did. Then I woke up in this room to lots of doctors. My uncle was taken aback and then asked what this old man looked like, and she said, he had white hair, but big eyebrows. That's all I can really remember. His big white eyebrows. This story has always stuck with me. Case file number 1146, written by DJD 33J, When the Matrix Fails Science. Here are some very odd occurrences that our physics engine sometimes pumps out. One day in middle school, my buddy and I were bored and waiting for the class bell to ring, and we were having a tug of war with a pencil. We were pulling each side, and it suddenly popped into two very clean pieces. No splinters, nothing. The pencil must have been very cheap, and our forces must have been incredibly equal from both sides. It was perfect symmetry. Working in a restaurant, I dropped a glass coffee pot from my hands, waist high, onto the hard tile floor. Instead of shattering into 1,000 pieces, it bounced like a basketball directly back into my hands, as if time rewound itself to prevent the damage. Another time in that same restaurant, I was in a hurry and was walking at a brisk pace to get somewhere. I slipped on some oil and was met with the excruciating pain that comes with blowing out your knee, as in a kneecap dislocation. I've had 5 dislocations prior to this, and the feeling and pain was exactly the same sensation as those previous injuries. I sat there in shock for a couple of seconds before assessing the damage, only to find that I was completely fine, no dislocation, nothing. It was like I warped into an outcome where I simply slid to the ground. I promptly bought some non-slip shoes after my shift. One of the strangest things that ever happened though, was when I was sitting on the bed next to my brother, watching TV. For no reason whatsoever, I looked over at him and poked him in the eye. I didn't want to do this, but I felt like I had no control over what was happening. It really felt like something turned my head to look at him and used the control mechanism to extend my arm and poke him in the eye. I think I'm an avatar that some alien is controlling, and he just needed to recalibrate his controls because things were getting funky. Case file number 1147, written by Blue Shift Glass. The knife that vanished into thin air. I was in the kitchen with a friend. I was reaching up to the highest shelf to try to get a serving tray down. As I tilted it towards myself to pull down, a huge kitchen knife, the Halloween kind, came sliding off, point first, towards me. This was in a place I was renting, no clue who put the knife up there. Time seemed to slow down as I watched the knife fall towards my body. I heard it scrape against a tray as it slid off, and watched the point aimed right for my solar plexus. I had time to think, oh crap, this is it. The knife is about to plunge hilt deep into my belly at a downward angle, and I'm going to die, in a strangely calm and detached way. As the point of the knife touched my t-shirt, the whole knife just winked out of existence as if it had never existed. It was just there and then not. I was ready to write the whole thing off as a weird hallucination or something, and question my sanity, when I looked over at my friend who was standing next to me. His eyes are huge and his jaw is open, and he says, "What just happened to that knife?" I started freaking out and shaking all over. "Oh my god, you saw it too?" He saw the exact same thing I did. We looked everywhere for a knife like that in the kitchen and opened every drawer because maybe it fell somewhere and we somehow didn't see or hear it. No knife or anything like it was anywhere in the house. This was in 2007, actually the week right after Thanksgiving that year. Craziest thing that has ever happened to me. I wonder about it all the time and wish I had an answer. If anyone else has experienced anything like this, I'd love to talk. Case file number 1148, written by New York Frame. When Destiny Led Me to My Father's Lost Book. There is a teeny second-hand bookstore in the town I live in. I've been driving by it every single day for almost 3 years, and pretty much every single day I say to myself, that little bookstore is so cute, I need to go check it out. But I never go. I'm a personal assistant, and this week my boss had me take a day off because he was sick and didn't want me to get sick too. Random cancellations like this only happen probably 4 times a year. I was sitting at home and decided that I wanted to read a new book. I have 2 or 3 books that I bought months ago and haven't read yet, but none of them sounded good at the moment. So I decided to finally go to the teeny tiny secondhand bookstore in town to see what it was all about. When I got there wasn't a single person in the store except for the man working at the register. I wandered upstairs where they keep the fiction books and browsed around for probably 30 minutes or so. The store was indeed super cute and charming, and it was fun to roam around for a bit, but I figured that I had seen it all and decided to head home. I went back downstairs and walked towards the door, but I noticed the row of books that I had missed when I walked around downstairs earlier, so I went to peek down the aisle. As soon as I turned the corner, a little old woman that I hadn't heard come into the store startled and dropped the book off the top of the pile she was looking through. I picked it up for her, and it just so happened to be one of the very few copies of a book that my own dad wrote and published over 15 years ago. Here's the crazy part though, he probably only sold 25 copies, and they were all sold in a completely different state, thousands of miles away from where I am now. Yet I somehow still happened to be in the exact place at the exact right time to be near a woman that just so happened to drop a copy of a book authored by my own father right as I walked by so that I, his daughter, could bend down and pick it up for her. Case file number 1149, written by Needs More Tuba. I found a secret door in my classroom and nobody believes us. In high school, one of our classes was dismissed for lunch about halfway through. When we came back from lunch, there was a tiny door in the wall besides my seat. My best friend sat beside me, and upon returning from lunch, we both exclaimed, "Where did that tiny door come from?" Everybody thought we were joking, but only one other person said he'd never seen the door before, and then later he admitted that he was just playing along because it was disrupting the lesson. But there was definitely not a door there before. It wasn't the first week of school either. And I definitely would have noticed and made a short joke. I'm 4'10" tall, well, short, about having a door just for me. I'm assuming it was originally a coal chute or something because the building was built in the 20s and the door led to the outside. The only thing is that it definitely was not there before we left for lunch. We are both 100% sure and remain so nearly 20 years later. Our teacher remembers the event, so it's not just something we made up. Case file number 1150, written by Angus 000000, the TV show that time forgot. So basically, when I was a little kid, there was this TV show that me and my mom watched. I remember it so vividly. We were just scrolling through the channels when we stumbled upon it, and she said it looked right up my street, since it was a fantasy show, and I was super into that sort of stuff back then. It was basically a live-action show about fairy tale characters, and after the first episode, younger me was super hyped to keep watching it. We subscribed to a magazine called Radio Times, which is a TV guide, and the show was in there with the time slot and all. So the next Friday, or whatever day it was, we settled down to watch it, and it never came on. It was weird, but we figured it had been cancelled or moved channels or something. I was bummed out, but kinda forgot about it. I didn't have access to the internet back then, so I couldn't Google what happened to it or anything. Years go by, and people started talking about this new show on TV, and I noticed it had the same plot. I was so excited thinking it was a rerun of this show I'd longed to watch since I saw the first episode as a kid. But apparently, the show was brand new. I looked it up, and it was. I still refuse to get over it, and have never watched a single episode of the new version. The version I don't have a creepy old memory of. I don't know how to word it. Technically, both versions are the same show, yet I've had it confirmed by people that what I remember from the plot is indeed that show. Exactly. Case file number 1151, written by Black Gold 09. The Matrix caught my girlfriend cheating. I was in college. I had a girlfriend at the time who lived 2 floors above me in the dorms. I woke up at 3 a.m. and had a really weird feeling. I put on some clothes and started walking up the stairs, not knowing exactly why. I walked around my girlfriend's floor for a bit, this weird feeling overwhelming me. I put my ear to her door. Nothing. I start to walk back to the stairwell, but it still feels weird. I go back and put my ear to the door again and hear the faintest of sounds, heavy breathing. I try the door and it's unlocked. I opened it and flipped the light on, and her roommate were fornicating. She yells, "Oh God!" and runs to the bathroom. Her roommate just stares at me. I close the door. We broke up the next day, pretty amicably, all things considered. Some facts. We had been together since high school and were a pretty solid couple. We specifically went to this college together. She never cheated on me before that night. Well, she says, and I believe her. Now, over 10 years later, she's happily married to the guy she left me for in high school. They have 2 kids. They never kept their door unlocked, so I guess it was an accident. Her roommate was bisexual, and they had been drinking that night. About a year later, I had a 2-week fling with her roommate who indeed confirmed it was the first time they had done that, and she didn't think she had cheated on me prior. I'm not religious, spiritual, I don't believe in premonitions, ESP, or anything like that. I have no idea why I woke up or went to her door that night. I certainly hadn't done anything like that in the prior 2 years we'd been going there together. Case file number 1152, written by Duckface08, Toy Story, Supernatural Edition. I was just a little kid back then when this happened, and at the time, I kept some of my toys in a large bag hanging on one of the posts at the end of my bed. One night, I was just lying in bed alone and awake, when all of a sudden, one of my talking dolls, the ones where you squeeze a hand or foot and they say something, in the bag, goes off on its own. "Mommy, let's play house." I was too scared to move, and could only get to sleep once my sister, whom I shared the room with, came in later to go to bed. Later, I had my mom throw away that doll. Fast forward a few years. My sister had received a Tickle Me Elmo for Christmas, and we spent a good portion of the evening playing with it. When we were done, we stood it up on the living room table and went downstairs to join our parents to watch TV. At some point, I decided to grab something from the kitchen and go upstairs. As I passed by, Elmo, still standing on the table, goes off on its own. "Why don't you play with Elmo?" I ran back downstairs. "Damn it, dolls, I will not play with you, stop asking me." Case file number 1153, written by Ham Broth, The Enigmatic Blue Figure. I think I was in 7th grade at the time, and it was around 3:30 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon. I was watching the post-school cartoon lineup with Rescue Rangers and DuckTales and all that stuff. My mom is nowhere to be seen because she'd just run off to I don't know where after my dad died, and I was left to my own devices with dinner. Usually I make microwave popcorn. That's what I got up to do this time. My room and the kitchen are both down at the very end of a really long hallway that at the middle point connects to an alcove that had the front door. I'm crossing the hallway from my bedroom to the kitchen and realize there's a figure standing in the hallway exactly halfway down, as though it had just come in through the front door. I stop and look at it, and it's there looking at me too. Now, this thing didn't have any details to the way that ghosts do in movies. It was a dark blue, opaque shape the size of a full-grown man. You could make out a head and limbs, but not hair or eyes and mouth or anything like that. I wasn't scared of it in the slightest. I just stood there and stared at it for a prolonged time because it was the freaking middle of the afternoon and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Eventually, I started to think this is a bit weird. Why is this thing in my house and why is it just staring at me? So in my head, I think the words, "Go away," at it. I've never had a thought that felt like that one before. It was like I had said it out loud. It had weight behind it. The figure immediately turned and ran out of sight into the front door alcove. I ran down the hallway to the alcove too and found it empty. I spent several minutes standing there questioning my own senses and whether that had really happened and what was that thing, or was I going crazy? Then I went back down the hallway and made my popcorn. Case file number 1154, written by Vesh Wolf, The Spinning Stick of Mystery. 2 strange anomalies. First, I was driving home from work through some brief unplanted farmland, winter and all that, and saw about a 3 to 4 foot stick about 15 feet off the ground. Now I could see it at a good distance away, but assumed some farmer kids got it stuck in some sort of wire or something that I couldn't see from a distance. Well, as I approached it, I could see that it was beginning to spin in the air exceedingly fast, only it wasn't connected to or stuck on anything, just a stick/branch spinning in the air, glitching the hell out. Second, a few months ago, my wife and I were doing laundry and getting our daughter to bed. As I walk up the stairs and glance into the master bedroom, I see something peek from around the stationary wooden French door. By something, I mean something. It was about 3 feet tall, had dog and cat ears, and it was covered in brown and white fur. The thing and I made eye contact for a split second when it ducked behind the door as I jumped up the steps 3 at a time. When I got to the master bedroom, nothing was there, naturally. Case file number 1155, written by Anonymous. The 1,000,000-to-1 Mystery. It was a 1,000,001 shot. While traveling for work from Orlando, I saw a handsome red-headed guy. I felt immediately and completely drawn to him while we were in line for security. I was stuck in the never-ending laneway behind him and never caught up. He ended up on my departing plane, and when we landed at the connection in Atlanta, he deboarded and disappeared before we could speak. Continued on my flight to Norfolk, Virginia, rented a car and drove 45 minutes away to the hotel where my company meeting was being held. Later that night, I was walking down the stairs of the hotel to the bar when the guy was standing at the bottom landing. Our eyes met, we smiled widely, and I firmly stated, "Well, there you are." We ended up at the exact same hotel, over 800 miles away from where we disembarked. How does that happen? We laughed, had a great conversation, and then he just awkwardly said, "Well, nice talking with you," and ran off. Totally confused, I thought for a minute and said to hell with it. Went to the front desk with my one business card, wrote on the back, and asked for the receptionist to deliver it to his room, but I only had his first name. She said, "There's 2 Andrews here. What do you want me to do?" I replied, "Well, just flip a coin and choose. No worries either way." He called me the very next day, and we dated for a couple of months. He was beautiful, powerful, intelligent, successful, and just wonderful in every way. Recently divorced after over a decade, I was the first woman he went out with since high school. We separated as I wanted to have a child while he was done after his 2 boys with his ex. Our time together was great for the both of us. How we came together has to be the strangest and most fate-driven story I can tell. Orlando has 850 flights a day, a 0.0011% chance he was on my flight. Atlanta has 2,700 flights, the connection, daily, so that alone was a 0.00037% chance we were going to the same destination. Additionally, there are 54,200 hotels in all of the US, a 0.00019% that we would end up at the same hotel. The chances of all that aligning? 1 in a million at least. So tell me, how in the world can this happen? Case file number 1156, written by Jolt, Unraveling the Mystery of the Oregon Storm. My dad and I were driving through Oregon in the middle of the night during a storm. We had taken the wrong road and were driving on a 1-lane road through the mountains. No houses, no cars, not even cell phone service, nothing but trees around. There was the odd flash of lightning, but mostly just heavy rain. As we turn a bend over the ridge of a forested hill to our left, we see the sky strobing like lightning, but in a continuous, perfect rhythm. I ask my dad what it is, but he shrugs and continues to concentrate on driving through the storm. We continue on past the hill, and it opens up into a valley where we finally see the source of the strobing light. Above the trees, maybe 50 feet up, was a large, 20 to 30 foot-ish in diameter ball of blue light. Difficult to tell the exact size, as it was still a fair distance away. Perfectly round, just hovering there. The strobing was coming from a single bolt of what I can only describe as lightning coming from the bottom of the ball and hitting the same tree over and over again and lighting up the sky. My dad and I watched it as we passed, and it continued on flashing until we rounded another bend and it was out of sight. To this day, we have no idea what it was that we saw. Bonus file written by Tweet Terror, The Mysterious Connection to the Other Side. When I was a toddler, I was living with my grandmother. One day, I woke up unusually early in the morning. It was still kind of dark outside, and I had dreamed of my great-grandmother and just felt kind of weird. I went downstairs to tell my grandmother, and she said, "I got a weird feeling too." I'll go see if she's okay. You stay here and have breakfast, okay? But little me just couldn't withstand the feeling in my guts, and she was worried too, right? So I silently followed after her. It was just down 2 streets. When my grandma went into her house, I caught up with her, and she told me to at least stay at the bottom of the stairs. Of course, I wouldn't have come this far, so after a minute, I snuck up the stairs. The first room on the left, behind the stairs, was my great-grandma's bedroom. She was in bed, smiling as best she could as she told my grandma she loved her. She didn't even notice me as she took her last breath. But my grandma noticed me and hugged me in tears. It felt so right to be there. My grandmother was there for her mother, and I was there for her, and it just felt like she had called us there, waking us up even. Granny wasn't even mad. We went to church that day, lit up a candle, and were both grieving together. Bonus file written by Anonymous, The Ghostly Pencil. My wife and I stayed at a nice hotel in downtown Pittsburgh. It was where I asked her to marry me after a lavish meal. I picked the room because it came with a huge Japanese soaking tub that me, a 6'1" man, could barely see over the edge of. Anyway, the first night we stayed there, we were sleeping in the single king bed. I believe the alarm clock said it was 2 or 3 a.m. To my left, and just a few feet from me, I heard the sound of what seemed like a pencil slowly rolling down a sloped surface. It was so deliberate and loud that it woke us both up. It was also so deliberate that while my heart thumped in my chest from the sudden noise, I quickly convinced myself that it was a pencil sliding off the desk in our room, and I went back to sleep. The next morning, to my surprise, I found that A, there were no pencils in the room, and B, there was no desk. It was my first night in the room, so I assumed that it, like the other hotels, had a place to sit and write. Well, that was not the case. The only thing I could find to write with were ballpoint pens with their caps on. They wouldn't make that distinctive, loud noise that a ridged wooden pencil makes as it rolls. Furthermore, there was no sloped surface in the room for anything to suddenly roll off of in the middle of the night or morning. The whole thing was weird enough for us to talk about it that morning. I do not believe in ghosts, but to be honest, I'd love to encounter something unexplained. I entertained the idea of a ghost pencil, but knew in my head it had an explanation grounded in reality, but that's not all that happened. That night, we were both in the soaking tub. The water was up to my chin. It was great. We were in the middle of February, a cold and miserable month in Pittsburgh. We were sloshing around in the tub, having a blast, pretending we were rich. And then, from the other room, we heard the buzzing of an old microphone hooked up to a PA system. Basically, the sound of feedback that precedes an announcement. The whole room filled with the buzzing sound of a microphone feedback. Our hearts thumped in our chests yet again, and then we both practically jumped out of our own skins. We heard the distinctive sound of someone blowing into a microphone to test it. Oh, Woody! You could see it in your head. It was so distinctive, just like the pencil. My heart went from thumping wildly to thrumming like a hummingbird's. Naked, I leapt from the tub and threw a towel around myself. That was a man blowing into a microphone, I said. My wife stayed in the tub, scared and quiet. I searched our room and did not find a speaker or any kind of speaker grill embedded into a wall or the ceiling. We could not, for the life of us, find a potential source for the sound other than an iPhone speaker that was already playing music from my iPhone. So that was our story. We still had one more night. We were exhilarated by our engagement and the ghosts that haunted the hotel. A week later, I had the thought to email the hotel. I asked them about their building. Pittsburgh is an old town, and downtown Pittsburgh is a very, very old town. They got back to me and explained, as my jaw dropped, that they used to be an old telephone factory. I don't know why I found meaning in that explanation or why it made everything click so well, but my thoughts immediately went to the sounds of a factory, the PA system, the drafting table, all relics from another time in that building's life. Case notes for file 1144, the Bermuda Triangle of West Texas. So the fact your husband didn't notice the repeating pattern of mud brick houses and the mechanic shop could potentially be explained as him just being caught in attention elsewhere? As he's just a passenger, a driver would be much more focused on the road and surroundings just by default. So maybe he was in his mind and he just didn't notice it the first time around. If we go by that explanation for your husband, then it comes down to space-time portals while driving. Of course, the vector of transport was behind, opposite the direction of travel. These have to be placed intentionally, because if it was random, there's no way you'd have reappeared back on the road just, maybe a couple miles back. Why not anywhere else? Why not inside the crust of the earth, in deep space, or out in the wild desert landscape of West Texas? So why are they being placed? Because they have to be. There's no way this is just random. It's impossible. It feels like a test or experiment of some kind. Maybe aliens are using us as technological guinea pigs? Or maybe it's the government that has us? One way or another, there's some entity that is placing them, for some reason. As a test, I imagine. Case notes for file 1145. Did I sleepwalk through an entire conversation? So things like this tie into how our subconscious and conscious minds are interlaced and connected, but no, not always in perfect harmony. The player we are, the perception of reality, sentience, it's what makes life worth living and gives everything meaning. But it can be suppressed, perhaps even hijacked. In this case, probably just a suppression. No real reason to think to hack your body or possess it, just to pack your bag and talk to your girlfriend. Wouldn't really make sense. But that it can be hacked or possessed, so to speak, is both terrifying and incredibly interesting. I just hope it doesn't happen to me. Case notes for the bonus file. A doctor's brush with the supernatural. Wow, is all I can describe this story as. The white light. It's so pervasive in folktales, lore, religion, everywhere. Is it the bridge between our consciousness and subconscious? So you're dying, trapped in your subconscious. The infinite darkness shutting down. You're dying, basically, representing that. But there's one hope left, to reconnect your soul to your body in the white light. Maybe this is even like the transition point for quantum immortality. Maybe it is a choice we make. It doesn't happen automatically. It's just happening in our subconscious and we don't always remember this. And the man who had died was aware of a soul so close to permanently disconnecting and helped her out. The old man in her dreams with the great bushy eyebrows. It's a kind of beautiful thought to me. And now time for the quote of the day. To the soul, there is hardly anything more healing than friendship. Thomas More. Yeah, it's those connections we make that make everything worth living. It's sentient. It's connecting with other sentient players. And I come to this thought all the time when I'm playing video games. I have a lot of trouble to play single-player games. Like, the story can be interesting, but I'd rather just watch a movie. If I'm playing a game or some contest just against a computer that is inanimate, non-thinking, not truly there, I lose interest. My only interest is in playing games against other players or with other players cooperatively. Then there's meaning to it. There's meaning to the experience. We assign meaning, sure, but it's still real. As real as we are, and I think we're pretty real. And even if you're introverted like me, it's that they're there that matters. Like, same thing in playing an MMORPG. I'm not always in a group, but just knowing that there's a world out there with real people that's persistent means everything. These notes are file 1146, when the Matrix fails science. So there's perfect symmetry in opposing forces. The harmony, balance. I love that little first experience, even if it's not exactly a glitch. It's like peace from a pencil. It's just perfect. Then you have a classical localized time reset, and it must be trippy to see it happen in real time. How ironic. But it has to be that, because when you drop something, it can bounce to an extent depending on the properties of the item you dropped and also the surface of the ground, how much energy the ground will absorb. So like a tennis ball on carpet won't be the same as a hard floor. But if you're on a tile floor with a coffee pot or something, that's not going to bounce much. There's no chance in hell that it can bounce, have enough energy to bounce all the way back up. So it has to be a reset. And the last one, though, kind of deeply unsettles me. I'm thinking about the real us in the true reality above the simulation, the person that's connected to our host avatar, not from the simulation, outside of it. Can they take over directly from us? Are they us in the sense that we're thinking? Can they just bypass our conscious sense of free will entirely? What of people who suffer from mental illnesses, loss of control? There are accounts of people who have committed atrocities and later tell the authorities and people that they don't understand why they did it. It was like it wasn't them, like they had no control at all. Maybe this is entangled with demonic possession too, but that seems to have more obvious signs when that happens. This seems more fickle, random, or very acute, short-lasting. No matter what though, the idea of not having control of yourself is freaky to me. Case notes file 1147. The knife that vanished into thin air. Oh, this is truly incredible. I was going to suggest quantum immortality, but no. Your friends saw the de-render in front of their eyes too. Wow. So there was another story of shirts de-rendering, and a suggestion to explain the loud noise that happened in the story was the air rushing in to fill the void from the de-rendered shirts. If you think about it, any object that de-renders in real time, if the object isn't there anymore, the mass that was there would be occupying space in the atmosphere, and then it's just not there, so that would create a pocket, a void of nothing. And the pressure of the air would compress it very quickly, and that would be happening so quickly, faster than the speed of sound, and then you would get a sonic boom, basically. So in this case, you don't report any noise. So I wonder if that hypothesis fits. Or maybe you were both so shocked that the noise just phased out of perception, because that's the other thing. Yeah, a noise might be created, but you have to actually hear it and process it. You know, the whole, if a tree falls in the forest but no one's around, does it make a noise? Well, it does, in the classic definition of noise, sound. But if no one is there to interpret it, it doesn't really matter. Either way, I think this proves at least sometimes de-renders occur with intent. Maybe one option in the toolkit is guardian angels to protect over us. The ability to make an object vanish is a very powerful one for sure. Imagine if a bodyguard had the ability to, just de-render bullets that are fired at their client. That'd be pretty powerful, I'd say. Let me just take care of that for you. Case notes are file 1148. When destiny led me to my father's lost book. So even if your father had sold 100,000 copies, this would have been a notable coincidence. But only 25? No, this had to be intentional. I don't know you, of course, but my guess is, after being reminded of your dad, the book he wrote, you reconnected with him. At least more than you otherwise would have. And sometimes that's all we need, the slightest and rarest of little nudges. And now time for the quote of the day. Don't try to solve serious matters in the middle of the night. Philip K. Dick. There's a lot of things that happen in the middle of the night that aren't exactly productive, let's call it that. Although for me, because I'm a night owl, this doesn't apply, but in the context of what's intended, in the middle of your waning hours, or when you're tired, I guess is a better way to say it, more universally for us night owls. Yes. Try to think on something, but don't make the final choice until after you sleep on it. Which I think is a great little saying, just I'll sleep on it. Get your mind right, refreshed, get good sleep, and then you're gonna process things much more clearly. Good advice. Case notes are file 1149. I found a secret door in my classroom, and nobody believes us. So having multiple witnesses, or at least one that maintains it to this day, not the other kid that wanted to just move things along, conveys a lot of weight to this. So can a door transport over from another universe and integrate within the historical context of everyone's minds? I mean, it's not just the door, presumably there's a whole passage behind the door. So that seems like more of a stretch, but I've been wondering, in these cases where there are clear anomalies that pop up, divergences in the known timeline, quantum immortality fits well, but when multiple people notice, it means at least a dual quantum jump, a trip with two people in the same, space-time bubble that floats over. What makes me scratch my noggin, scratch it away. Why does the multiverse care about sending two friends, say, or loved ones, family members, to the same new universe? Or is it that mere happenstance, luck of the draw? The nearest suitable universe for both of you was the one that you wound up in. I guess Occam's razor fits neatly there. Maybe there are times where people are close friends and they die together, but they don't go to the same new universe. Maybe they're not perfectly suited for the same universe, but often they are. So, simple explanation, I guess. Case notes for file 1150. The TV show that time forgot. So this happened to me too, and I made a story for the channel over it. Although for me, it was only one episode that was different. Not the entire series, or like a seeing the show and then it disappears from existence and then reappears. But it was related to a TV show, which is pretty interesting. For me, it was Stargate SG-1, the episode Entity, in I think the 4th season? Yeah, towards the end of it. So you're a visitor from another universe, I would say. I wonder, if we both traveled through the multiverse void, at least our souls did, is there a way to detect this? Does it change the energy state or orientation of our atoms at all? Any method to track it at all? Because as this stuff becomes more mainstream, the scientific method can get involved. Hypothesis, testing, predicting, and detecting. It would all be very handy and cool. It's almost like trying, to predict earthquakes or something like that. Maybe there's ways to do it where you can even detect death approaching and like a shift. And that would give a lot of closure to people who are in the original universe where someone dies. And I mean, right now, people aren't aware of quantum immortality, and it's still just a theory, a hypothesis, really. Although very compelling to me. You think about all the people in those original universes where people do die, they don't know that the soul moves on to a different universe and they just keep on going, unbeknownst to them most of the time. So it would give finality and closure for them. They can't talk to the person again, but they know they're still okay. Literally just living their life normally. That would be a very positive thing, I think, for humanity to know. Case notes for file 1151. The Matrix caught my girlfriend cheating. So they're happily together now, years later, with children. Was this merely buffered reality filtering down to your conscious mind from your subconscious, basically telling you that, yeah, this isn't the girl for you, mate. Here's why. And then it guided you to the unholy event transpiring. It just wasn't meant to be, in the sense that your life and her life, presumably, would be worse off. Maybe it's even more than that. I think a lot about the Adjustment Bureau and being guided by angels, God, the simulation masters. Certainly we're influenced by a lot in our lives with incomplete information about what those influences even are. But stories like this, in my mind, prove that there are forces out there that try to help us and have knowledge of the future, which I think again is a buffered reality. So what we experienced, the future already happened. We made choices. I believe in free will. It's just that we already made them and now we're living through them again. Like going back in a replay in a game for learning purposes. I do that all the time. It makes perfect sense. I think we're just trying to learn who we are really and correcting the mistakes we make and learning from them, to re-experience them, to learn from them. Case notes for file 1152. Toy Story, Supernatural Edition. This happened to me once as a kid too. I wonder if our body's own EM field can influence the electronics inside these toys and dolls. Some people have very intense fields, which can cause fluctuations in streetlights, TVs, anything using electricity or that has capacitors built in. The only other option is that these inanimate items are being possessed, which is frankly too creepy for me to entertain. I'm not going to go down that road. No thanks. Stay away from me, Chucky. And now time for the movie of the day, Pitch Black. So this movie doesn't pull any punches, and I think it's Vin Diesel's best role by far. He has a look and energy of an imposing warrior, and indeed with a slight hint of something supernatural or above normality sprinkled in. The movie takes you for a ride in both intensity and suspense, but more than that, it has very strong character development. That's what I love most. When people are met with great adversity, challenges beyond what almost any human ever goes through, and overcome it, well, that grips me and thrills me. I want to see how people are going to react to situations that are just completely nuts. I mean, that's why I like Poseidon too. That's another movie of the day I'll get to. And it's funny too because I have photosensitivity. I get migraines if I'm exposed to daylight and I have to wear sunglasses outside. It's all kind of... Basically, I'm a vampire that likes garlic, pretty much. Anyways, it's cool that the character in this has to wear like goggles to protect his eyes because his eyes see deeply and light in a different way, and he has to shield them. Of course, they crash land on a planet that has 3 suns. Of course, it's pitch black because, well, not to spoil anything, but obviously there's an eclipse that lasts, and then there's creatures that come out, and it's very interesting, and I highly recommend it. And it's also part of a series. There's Pitch Black, and then Chronicles of Riddick, and then Riddick after that. So, worth watching all of them. Absolutely. Case notes for file 1153. The Enigmatic Blue Figure. So immediately when you described the thought you had, how it had weight to it, when you told them to leave, my mind connected to a past story involving an alien encounter in a desert. A few actually, where people describe a telepathic linking. You speak words, and the alien or entity, if you prefer to call it, understands and hears you, quote unquote, and you can understand it at least in its intent. Same description back then too, no fear at all, nothing to fear. My guess is there are biological prototypes they're testing how effective they can be in functioning on the ground and around other humans. They want to study us in real time, which involves blending in. There was also a story about a weird character that was actually inside a company, and the person meeting him knew something was off. It wasn't real, I guess. So I think they are among us, and they're testing different prototypes and telepathic linking with us, which I imagine they do with each other effortlessly, but linking with a human mind is different. It also reminds me of Slender Man too, but I think that's inspired from this weird reality we live in. Case notes for file 1154, the spinning stick of mystery. So when objects or animals get stuck in the sky, usually I chalk that up to space-time anomalies, particularly focused on manipulating the time element. In this case, it strikes me more as a universal instability moment. Those cases where gravity doesn't work properly, like a table lifts up and slams back down, or in this case even disabling friction. Otherwise, the stick would require a constant input of energy to be spinning, even without gravity affecting it, because it would be constantly bumping into all those air molecules. So somehow, either there was something inputting energy, something was physically spinning it, or was it just able to bypass the air molecules and not impart kinetic energy from it while banging into them, which doesn't seem to make sense, like it was phasing through them, but still interacting with light. It's very odd indeed. Universal instability makes more sense here. The laws of physics simply weren't applying it to it, as they should have. The other possibility is that this is some kind of test. Maybe the military, but it seems like an odd location to do that for the military. So if it was a test, it would be alien, most likely. Or maybe even like a spirit, trying to train themselves like Dean was, when he was a ghost. Case notes for file 1155, the 1,000,000-to-1 mystery. Sorry to hear that in the end it didn't work out. Kids can indeed be a breaking point. Now I'm thinking about Monica and Richard from Friends. They had the same issue. Of course, it's fiction, but it's a story that does happen. People get together, and they don't immediately discuss if they want kids, and then, turns out that one person does and the other doesn't, or maybe they can't have them, and that causes an issue. Understandable, but very unfortunate. We can't give up on what we want, or we'll end up resenting the other person down the road, even if we think we won't immediately. Eventually you will. It's like a seed that plants and grows and festers, and it's not a good seed. Maybe it was important for you to understand what you wanted most in life. Maybe you weren't quite aware of it. And this was all part of that necessary journey. One more domino falling, and millions more to come. Still beautiful, in my view. And now time for the quote of the day. The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. Albert Einstein. I just love this quote because it's Albert Einstein. And yes, this was the code as it was, 50, 60 years ago. And yeah, I can't imagine what it is today. Personally, I don't agree with income taxes at all. I think there shouldn't be any. I think the fair tax makes much more sense. Not that I think any taxes really make any ethical sense, but that's a different discussion, I guess. I think in the end, making it as simple and as unobtrusive for people in their lives as possible would be best. As it stands now, most people work like the first 3 months of the year, entirely for the government. That's crazy. And the craziest thing to me about that is that no one seems to care. Isn't that crazy to anyone else? Case notes for file 1156. Unraveling the mystery of the Oregon storm. What I find fascinating here is you don't describe any sort of exaggerated or extreme noise. Thunder is caused by the rapid expansion of the air as it becomes superheated by the lightning bolt, which means if there was no particular thunder from this continual discharge, that it was very low voltage. It wasn't superheating the air. You could probably have touched the bolt, so to speak, and it wouldn't have affected you. Ball lightning comes to mind here, but I've never heard one described as being so big and also so perfectly round. Usually there's like reverberations of it, there's crackling energy coming off of it. It's not a perfectly spherical blue ball. What you describe is hundreds of times larger than a normal ball lightning, which in of itself is exceedingly rare. Could this be a technological test or evidence of alien presence in that area? Maybe. Or maybe it's an ensemble, a gathering of spiritual energy, which I do postulate the possibility that ball lightning is a type of spiritual energy that's condensed and emitting visible light that we see as a blue ball. What if a bunch of spirits gathered together? But what would they be doing in the middle of nowhere in Oregon? I don't know. Case notes for the bonus file. The mysterious connection to the other side. So this is the beauty of life, sentience, consciousness. We're connected on a deeper level to each other, especially those we love. How else can anyone explain this? You both knew, felt it in your gut via a connection from your subconscious, interacting with the same feels that your great-grandmother was interacting with too. She was literally sending you like a text message, a spiritual text message. Wake up, come, I'm gonna pass on. Just feeding you that information about what was happening, so you wouldn't miss that final breath. It's what she wanted. And while it is very sad, it's also cathartic, I think. You would have both felt much worse if you weren't there, I think. Case notes for the bonus file. The ghostly pencil. I couldn't even articulate how I'd feel if I heard a microphone noise in my own hotel room. Even believing in many supernatural forces, I'd at least get the room changed up. Well, that said, maybe the soaking tub was good enough to offset that. It sounds divine. Something kind of funny, thinking about ghosts and spirits, they're usually invisible, right? Their presence was not always felt. What if a few of them are, well, peeping toms, let's say? What else are you going to do with your time besides watch some adult entertainment? I don't know. Watch video games? People play video games? Maybe. And now time for the quote of the day. For a list of all the ways technology has failed to improve the quality of life, please press 3. Alice Kahn. Yes, waiting online. Oh my god, and that terrible phone music that they use. I know it's royalty free, there's no real need to improve it, and they don't even want you hanging on the line really, so why not make the music as annoying as possible, right? But yes, this is not exactly the best improvement, although there is an actual improvement to this where some places will have you have an option to just call you back instead of having you wait online, which makes total sense. Everyone should do that. But I guess it's an extra cost, I don't know. If it's easy to implement, everyone should do that. Kinetic Symphony signing off.